It is my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the University of Miami, the Africana Studies Program, myself and my good friend Ludlow Bailey to the 5th annual Art Basel panel discussion at the University of Miami. Africana Studies at the University of Miami is interested in the research, the acquisition, and the dissemination of information pertaining to Africa and peoples of African descent, wherever they happen to be on this planet. And that is what we have been doing all these years. We also believe that as African peoples, we are a people of song, a people of dance, a people of creativity, a people of the arts, a people of the sciences. You name it, wherever you look at, you find us there. And therefore it is very important, we believe, Ludlow Bailey and I believe, that we articulate the contribution of African peoples to the global arts scene. We thank you all for coming. We have been doing this for 5 years now. In addition to this, every February, we organize an African diaspora art exhibition in celebration of Black History Month. We have been doing that for more than 10 years, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to continue our collaboration. I would like to thank the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau, Marilyn Holyfield of Holland and Knight, Curbs and Stoops, Sugarcane Magazine, the Miami Country Day School, Jack Sheman Gallery, and of course the Africana Studies Program for supporting this event. This is the first time that we have had substantial support, and we hope that that partnership would continue into the future, because we have to continue articulating the essence of who we are. If for nothing at all, Ferguson has made it all the more imperative. And so once again, welcome to the University of Miami, to the 5th annual Art Basel panel discussion. It is now my pleasure to introduce my good friend and collaborator, Mr. Ludlow Bailey, to take it up from here. Ludlow Bailey.
Thank you, Edwin. Good morning and welcome. I'm really honored to see all of you here, because I know this is a very busy time and you have so many other options, but I'm really grateful to see you all here. This event is very special to me because we almost didn't have it this year. The University of Miami obviously is going through a lot of transitions. There's going to be a new chair of Africana Studies, new chair of art history. We have a new director of the law, and this frankly was not a priority. So I am really grateful for the support of the people who stepped up and sponsored Marilyn Holyfield, Miami Country Day, the Greater Miami Visitors and Convention Bureau, Jack Sheman in New York, who's the leading gallery in contemporary Africana work, and so many other people, because this could not have been done without the help of my family, certainly. I want to thank my son for doing that beautiful video that you saw with the, I believe, anthems, what I call it, because that's something we use. My wife and I actually use that song in our wedding, so it means a lot to me. And my son is 14 years old, and he put together that iMovie. I think you should give him a really strong round of applause. idea was to show images of contemporary Africana. As many of you know, you saw works from Elanat Sui, we saw works from Rene Cox, who's in the audience, we saw work from a number of very important African artists. Now, I want to get this program moving quickly because I know that we were a little bit delayed again this year, but we have a really exciting program for you, and I'd rather have you listen to the panelists than to me. This year, we have the pleasure of having Dr. Rhea Combs, who is the current curator for, if you'd like to stand, for film and photography at the Smithsonian Museum for African American History and Culture, the one that's coming in 2015. So I'm really delighted that she's decided to join us. We've got Rene Cox, really one of the best photographers in the world. We have Professor Moyo, is what I call him, Okediji from the University of Texas. And then we have my very, very good friend from the Dominican Republic, who is one of the most creative people I know on the planet. He's an architect and an artist, extraordinary artist, and a producer of events. We're working on a project called Africa in the Dominican Republic. And we have a thing called CADA Conversations that we'll be doing globally. So, I would like to start the program with Dr. Rhea Combs. So if you could be so kind to join us.
Thank you. Good afternoon or good day. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. Again, my name is Rhea Combs. I'm a museum curator of film and photography at the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. It is a real pleasure to be here at Art Basel and to be here with you this evening, or this afternoon. I want to thank Ludlow Bailey, the University of Miami's Department of Africana Studies, and everyone who's made this program possible, especially on a Sunday when we've all had quite a bit of festivities. I really appreciate that you all, the dedication of you all coming out today. So as the curator for the Smithsonian's newest museum and its head of its Center for African American Media Arts, I am committed to ensuring the rich and dynamic stories of people throughout the diaspora, both known and anonymous, as they're sort of shared throughout the world. And part of the Smithsonian's mission as the 19th museum is currently under construction and slated to open in June of 2016. Presently, we're open. However, the building is planning to be opened June of 2016. But presently, we produce public programs, temporary exhibitions, and are busy creating 11 inaugural shows. Currently on view is Hale Woodruff's Rising Up murals at Talladega College. And in May of 2015, I'm co-curating a show called Through the African American Lens, Selections from the Permanent Collection, that will be a preview of what individuals will be able to see once the museum opens in 2016. So I encourage each and every one of you to please come to the museum. We have our space in the American History Museum right now. Again, the Smithsonian is constituted of 18 museums. We will be the 19th, and at present, our shows travel, or we also have a temporary space in the American History Museum, along with a variety of public programs that we put on throughout the country. Again, this is a museum that is the nation's museum. It is a museum that will tell a complex and rich story of the African and African American experience. And it's really a privilege and an honor to be able to be a part of this history making. The museum, just a little bit to give you a little information, is located between the Washington Monument and the American History Museum, with Martin Luther King Jr., the memorial of Martin Luther King Jr. in the distance to the north, and then across the tidal basin sits Lincoln and the Jefferson memorials. These symbolic monuments are not lost on the interconnectedness of the past and the present. But the vision of the museum is to use African American history and culture as a lens into what it means to be American, what it means to be Black, to create opportunities to explore and revel in Black history and culture, to view African American history and culture from an international perspective, and to be a place of collaboration and dialogue. So part of this vision requires an emphasis, obviously, on art and culture. I mean, it's rooted in history, but art and culture is a piece that is integral to the museum. It's not simply, the museum is not simply a book on the wall, in other words. And so I feel like it's best, the museum is most sort of effective when it engages a diverse set of audiences and provides various points of entry and access. And for me, I feel like a lot of that happens through film and through photography. But they happen in a myriad of ways. And so I seek, as a curator, to not only recognize the fine works of artists and history makers, but to recall the various stories so that others can learn of the fascinating efforts of our ancestors and of other living artists. So this opportunity affords me the chance to re-envision the experiences of Blacks in America as in broad terms as possible, but recognizing that visual culture has the potential of being a great equalizer. So one of the projects I'm working on right now is a piece called Double Exposure, and it's an 8-part book series, photo book series, that in the first 3 we've developed that will be coming out in February of 2015, and then the subsequent ones will be in May. And the first one is really about a collection, it shows a collection of our work, and it is a complement to the exhibition that we'll be putting together through the African American lens. The other 2 that we'll be following look at civil rights as well as African American women. But each series of photo books will look at a select image of about 50 select images from the museum's permanent collection and really reflect sort of the variety of subject matters that we're looking at. It's really important to realize that the museum started with a collection of nothing, 0. And it was important for us to collect from the attics and the histories and the sort of communities in which we know our Blacks live and reside and have a variety of different stories and that haven't been collected by others. So it's really important for us. And at this point, we have over 50,000 objects, and within that, our photography collection is continuing to grow. It started from scratch, and we have over 15,000 photographs in our collection. And they range, obviously, in subject and form, comprised of early 19th century photographs, regional photography, celebrities, some fine art, and some contemporary work. We need to increase our contemporary photography collection, and so that is one of the efforts that I am definitely working on and is part of our sort of growing, one of my goals. But double exposure is just an initial way to show some of the variety of works that we currently have, and it's a way to promote the power and promise that comes from visual culture. I think one of the pieces that, so just moving forward, I think that it's important for us to understand that, African American culture is a complex and a dynamic experience, and that with regards to photography, I I, like bell hooks, think that cameras can give us a power, if you will. Cameras gave, as bell hooks said, cameras gave to Black folks, irrespective of class, a means by which we could participate fully in the production of images. And it is this perspective and attitude that I look for when collecting works. Part of the visual culture can be one's ability to self-define in the present world of, and the ubiquity of selfies, this notion of self-definition. It can be complicated, but I see that as a way of really allowing artists and allowing us to understand sort of the freedom of expression. And so it's that freedom to express, that freedom to sort of understand the complexities of our lives that I'm drawn to. And I think that that's one of the important sort of narratives that will run through the museum. And as Audre Lorde said, if I didn't find myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies of me and eaten alive. And so it's essentially that kind of philosophy and that's part of my curatorial approach. So in closing, I'll just say that Black aesthetics is rich and diverse, and it reflects many things. And it is through those many things that I'm looking to make sure that our photography collection, our Center for African American Media Arts, which collects, promotes, produces, and privileges visual and oral media, will emphasize the ways in which Blacks and other people of African descent act as agents and participate in constructing their own image. So this is sort of the modus operandi in which I am looking to develop our Center for African American Media Arts, the ways in which I'm looking to develop at our growing collection, and it's the ways in which I hope our audiences will engage in the museum and the work of the museum. So with that, I will close and say thank you very much for entertaining my talk today.
Okay, our next panelist is Dr. Moyo Okediji from the University of Texas, Austin. Now, I've been studying contemporary African diaspora art for a while, and I thought I was an expert. But Dr. Moyo is considered one of the leading experts in the world on contemporary African art, and he's doing some pretty interesting projects. There's one that's currently online that tries to identify and focus on the 200 most influential African diaspora artists. So he's really very involved in the field. It's not just an academic research approach that he's taking, but through the internet now, it's very possible to engage artists all over the world. And today he's going to share some of his findings with us and to give us an idea in a very broad way what's really happening in contemporary African diaspora art. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming today, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here with you. And thank you so much, Ludlow, for inviting me, and the great Department for African Studies. I would like to discuss with you briefly about some of the projects that I undertake in terms of Africana studies. And because we have very limited time, I will situate my work mostly as theory. In other words, I will situate the theory of the African diaspora around the notion of amnesia and the concept of time and space as next amnesia. And I will theorize around the notion of the nest, N-E-S-T, and the next, N-E-X-T. And I believe that the distance between amnesia and diaspora is one of fragmentation or disconnect between the nest, N-E-S-T, and the next, N-E-X-T, between time and space, between past and present. And let me expatiate on this notion. In May and June 2014, I went to Dakar and examined the works displayed at the Dakar Biennale. And since I've been here also at the at Basel, I've been looking at some of the work, and the question arises: where is the nest? Where are the mothers? Have we lost them in the interstices of memory? Have we forgotten our nest? The 90-year-old painter here, how do you use this? There's a 90-year-old painter here. Her name is Akimbade Egbayemi, and she's a shrine painter. And the other woman, Sili Kamara, is much younger, about 35. And they are both trained in indigenous painting traditions of art in Africa. These artists represent the nest, the N-E-S-T, of artistic expressions of Africa, distanced through amnesia from diasporic recollection. The contemporary consciousness of the Dakar Biennale and the Miami Basel have suffered amnesia from this mother painting tradition as it travels along dislocated time and place in the diasporic vessel across the millennia. The curators therefore forget the nest, the N-E-S-T, the nest of African creative flow, the nest of time, the nest of space, the matrix of maternal articulations. The bird has abandoned its nest, and there is no longer a place to rest. With the burning of the nest, life is now turned to the next, N-E-X-T, with a focus on the next, and in loss of the nest, the caged bird has reached the metaphor of the door of no return. And here I stand at the door of no return at Dakar. It is the designated as the traditional point of departure for the definition of the African diaspora. The door of no return is symbolic in the diaspora theory of next. For the enslaved body, the past is amnesic, the present is tense, and the only condition of existence lies in hope, in optimism, and the future, the next step, next experience, next stage. For the enslaved body, in the throes of trauma, the mind focuses on what is next after departure from the nest. To keep moving, To survive, the enslaved body must leave the moment, escape the present condition, and leap the mind and the body toward the next situation. This is the theory of the diaspora expressive art. What is next? To survive, the diasporic artist keeps a step ahead of the hunting pack, and continually invents the next style, next medium, next notion, next idea, next expressionism. The diaspora condition does not rest. It turns next into an active verb. It nexts the body. It nexts the work. It nexts the creative direction of the aesthetic globe. The next artist is always a step forward while checking his back to locate the position of the hunting pack. The work of Tom Phillips, right here, the middle passage, explores the traumatic compass of the next aesthetic, with the two heads scanning the seascape, looking ahead of the slave ship to anticipate what is coming, what is next, as they leave the nest for the uncertain location of the vast seascape. At the point of its dispersal from the nest to the northern hemisphere, the diasporic body was solid black. The color of black, of carbon, as coal, is pregnant. It's a composite and saturated color. When black as coal is set on fire, it releases all the colors of the spectrum. And when the fire dies, it condenses as ashes, as white. Black, as fire, therefore produces and attracts all colors, including white, as Adrian Piper and Michael Harris have discovered in these two text-oriented works, one titled Pale Face by Adrian Piper, and the second, What Are You by Michael Harris. Piper produced Pale Face in 1978 using text exclusively to structure and form the work on paper. Michael Harris, in the 2013 work, combines text and image. In the work titled Political Self-Portrait, Pale Face, Adrian Piper tells the story of her black skin as so light that it easily passes for white. She presents her body as fragments of gray tones, a nexted pigmentation in the transmutation of the black body. Michael Harris draws attention to the wide spectrum of colors located within the connotation of the black pigmentation. His work, titled What Are You? For Colored Girls Who Are Colored, Harris uses photography as an installation medium to map the variations of shades and tones of black. He associates each of the characters in the installation with specific locations, as if the notion of geography is a major factor in the location of their blackness. His text, displayed at the bottom of the photo installation, reads the following: Atlantan, Ethiopian, Brazilian, Irish American, Californian, Jamaican, Puerto Rican, Scotch, and African American. But the geographical orientations of these faces are irrelevant to the specificities of their location within the spectrum of blackness. Within the continent of Africa itself, rainbow is the new black, with African art incorporating Caucasian and Arab artists. The new Black African Rainbow Diaspora incorporates the work of white South African sculptor Jane Alexander, whose Butcher Boys was an instant sensation when he showed them in 1986, towards the end of the apartheid regime. Black supporting white and colored artists, writers, performers were banished by the apartheid governments of South Africa. Many of them moved to Europe and North America, and activists founding a new African diaspora of Caucasians living as exiles, aliens, and nomads in their new territories. The brown bodies of the African Arabs and Asians began to accumulate in other African diasporas as they fled political complications in North and East Africa. Idi Amin exiled many Indo-Africans into exile during his reign, and the patriarchal control of the bodies of Arab women artists led many of them to seek asylums in foreign lands, beginning from the 60s. A good number of white, Asian, and Arab artists continue to work in Africa, contributing their voices and signatures to expressive cultures throughout the continent. In December last year, the online Arts College, University of African Art, undertook a project to identify 200 most influential African artists of the 21st century. I solicited nominations of names of artists from the more than 12,000 members affiliated with the online college. In addition, I formed a jury of top curators, artists, professors, and gallerists to send me 10 nominations each. We received more than 1,000 names of artists from countries in Africa, North America, the Caribbean, South America, and Europe. From all the names submitted, a small jury of 5 experts chose 200 artists. In a random order, we pasted their names and works online for the general public to judge. Actually, I probably should still be here. A month ago, I began to analyze the results of the general public as jury based on the number of views and likes posted against the works of these artists. The results of my analysis are revealing. First, the most liked artists by the public jury are not necessarily those artists considered the favorites of the museum galleries and auction houses. It was stunning to note the top 10 ranking by the public jury. The artist Sila Kamara, this artist here, and Iya Egbeyemi, never before shown in a gallery, are among the top 5 artists ranked by the public jury. Sila sits at the top of the list with an astonishing figure of 14,000 912 viewers. The second place goes to Virginia Ryan with 4,428 votes. The distance between the first and second place is more than 10,000 votes. Betty Aqua comes third. Ijaya Bayami fourth. Nika Davis Okundayi fifth. And the top 10 names are all women. Top 10 names are all women, except for Neil Ashton Harris, placed at the 7th position. Ryan, this artist, born in Australia, living in Ivory Coast, is well known throughout West Africa in the art community. She has been resident in the region for more than 2 decades, although she has regular shows in Europe. The third on the list is Betty Aqua, who also explores a European style of pointillism that she has adapted into strokes of color. Born and raised in Ghana, she markets her work mostly to collectors in Ghana, while holding exhibitions in Europe and living a nomadic artistic style. Yaya Bayami, voted fourth, is in her 90s. She leads a group of shrine painters known as the Akure School in Ile-Ife. Her work and those of members of her school are found on walls of shrines throughout the city of Ile-Ife. She has mostly painted together with others on large works as joint ritualistic performances, and it was not until early 2000s that she began working on separate canvases as an individual artist. The fifth on the list is Nika Davis Okundayi, fashion designer, painter, muralist. She trained as a painter and designer in the Oshobo School. She runs the Nika Gallery in Lagos and has exhibited her works in many parts of Africa, Europe, and widely in the United States. Leila Essedi, Arab-Moroccan woman artist, voted number 6, is a New York resident. Her work with hijab-wearing women plays on the Orientalism of 19th century European painters. She says, I quote, "In my art, I wish to present myself through multiple lenses as artist, as Moroccan, as traditionalist, as liberal, as Muslim. In short, I invite viewers to resist stereotypes." The first male artist on the list and the first person born outside of the continent is Neil Ashton Harris. For the past 10 years, he has been associated with Ghana as part of the New York University Art Program in West Africa. The 8th artist on the list is Kenya-born artist living in New York, Wangechi Mutu. Her phantasmagoric collages exploring a variety of themes, including alienation, gender, and psychological mutations, are quite known. South African artist Tracy Rose was voted 9th. Her gendered performances, videos, and installations have been shown at various museums and galleries in New York, London, and other cities worldwide. Lily Bernard, Los Angeles-based artist, voted 10th, has explored the intersection of race, gender, and coloniality. Using the aesthetics of the next expressionism, many African diasporic artists engage robustly the Euro-American traditions of representation and Orientalism. Rene Cox, who is here today, just left. Rene Cox, for instance, deconstructs the concept of the master in masterpieces in a situation that recalls the use of the term master in North America in the last 400 years. And we find similar engagements in Rhea Niati's reinterpretations of Delacroix's Women of Algiers, painted in 1834. Kehinde Wiley returns to the African nest and takes solace in reinterpretations of Dogon philosophy and art. Kira Walker genders and sexualizes the monumental Egyptian art of the Sphinx, also returning to the nest as she embraces the next aesthetic. Rene Stout hybridizes the nest and the next in her exploration of the Nkisi sculpture of the Congo. And these are the top 25 artists. I'm not going to go into details. The artists voted the top 50 by this public jury come from Africa, Europe, North America, and the Caribbean. The list composed before the Dakar Biennale presents a reading of the diaspora that shows the amnesia of the contemporary art market in the definition of the term African diaspora, the elimination and erasure of the next artists, including Sidi Kamara and Iya Egbeyemi, from events such as the Biennale and the Art Basel, conflicts with the vote of confidence that the public still resides in the next artist, even as people anticipate and welcome next works, next ideas, next notions, and expressions. And I will conclude this reading with the works titled Rites of Passage by the diaspora painter Rodrigo Richardson, and also with a short excerpt from Lose Your Mother. This is a very interesting work, Lose Your Mother, A Journey Along the Slave Route, recently published by Saidiya Hartman. She writes, and I quote, "If the past is another country, then I am its citizen. I am the relic of an experience most preferred not to remember, as if the sheer will to forget could settle or decide the matter of history. I am a reminder that 12 million crossed the Atlantic Ocean and the past is not yet over. I am the progeny of the captives." Dr. Hardman and Rodrigo Richardson admonish us in their works to battle amnesia, and even as we crave the next aesthetics, to recollect the next origins of the ideas as we navigate these rites of passage along the endless journeys of the African diaspora. Thank you.
I just, before she gets in, and she's a Mac person, I know, but because Dr. Willie Logan is here, I want to really commend you on the show you did in Opa-Baka. I don't know if you read my piece in the Rio, but you guys just knocked it out of the ballpark, and I don't see any reason why you can't be competing with any other destination in Miami. And I mean, Rene's work was fantastic, really good
Now,
work.
everybody's work was fabulous. There is Karen Oliver, Joshua with a Y, Klaus work, and Nari Ward, and myself. And the show is, I mean, it's top notch. It's not, there's no, like, it's just 100% A+.
And your opening, as I wrote, was as good as any in the world. So congratulations. Open like that.
It was like better, you know. I don't even compare it. It was like very good, and it was fun. That was the key thing. And people were really nice and very cool. And I had a good time. And I thank you. And I guess, well, I'm Rene Cox anyway. So, and so thank you to the University of Miami for not funding this, whatever. But providing us with a space and some breakfast food, which is really nice. And what else? Art Basel has been really good. But I have to share with you, like I'm wearing my sunglasses because I've only had 2 hours of sleep. Okay, so like I went to fade to black last night, and I'm fading out right now myself. So I am just gonna kind of like make this very easy on myself, but I think you're going to enjoy this. I mean, I trust. And I'm just gonna play this film that I just finished October 16th, really, which was my birthday, and performed and showed it at BAM on that day. And that was my first performance piece, and like in a, I guess what, almost 25-year career. So that was really exciting. So allow me to present Sacred Geometry. Good evening. This is the voice of the goddess. In the next 10 minutes, we will take you with us into another world, into the world of music, spirit, and meditation. Turn off your mind and take a deep breath and relax. Let the rhythm be your guiding light. The goddess who does not require validation from anyone is the most feared force on the planet. Force on the planet. Namaste. Sat Nam, truth is my identity. Thank you.
Yeah, that's how powerful that sister is. Rene Cox, the goddess.
And the others too, all the people that know.
This is true. This is
Not
true.
about me.
I like the work.
It's
I
about
like the
you.
work. It's very good.
Yeah.
And we honor you. In any event, our next presenter is my very good friend, Jeffrey Pena, from the Dominican Republic. And an overeducated RISD. We were kind of, I went to Brown, so we kind of know our playground. RISD is a very fine school. But as I said, he's really one of those, because I like to produce culture. And for me, the culture of the African diaspora is the most exciting in the world, right? Especially in the Caribbean. I mean, if you haven't been to the Dominican Republic, you need to go. Of course, Cuba, everyone knows I love Cuba too. And of course, we can't leave out Trinidad, we can't leave out Jamaica, we can't, you know, and so on. But we can talk about Africa too, right? The continent of Africa is amazing. But without further ado, Jeffrey's going to talk to us a little bit about Afro-Latina culture in the Caribbean and broadly in the world.
Hello guys, thank you for coming. Thank you Miami for providing the platform for us to have this conversation. And thank you Ludlow for the really flattering introduction. So I'll be talking, let me full screen, 1 second, sorry. I'll be talking about contemporary African diaspora art in Latin America in general, and then zooming into the Caribbean. I'll take you through a few scales all the way down to the Dominican Republic and the area where I grew up. I think some things that I see that is often talked about in African diaspora from the Caribbean is issues of displacement, finding identity, defining identity, because race in the Caribbean is not as binary as an issue as it is in the United States, where you're either considered black or not. In the Caribbean, there are many more shades, and the situation gets very complicated. We also don't have the similar history of the United States, but you should know that a vast majority of African slaves that were brought to the New World were taken south of the U.S. So there is a lot of presence in Latin America. Here you can see the connection to Pangea here. So there's definitely like an idea that all of these places were one, so that we started from a similar source. One of the artists that I like to speak about today is Oscar Murillo, who's a Colombian artist and who's a really hot Colombian artist right now. He's doing very well in auction market. He's represented by David Zerner Gallery in New York, which is one of the top New York galleries. And he makes this kind of work. He's often compared to Basquiat. And I think a lot of how he carries himself is very Basquiat-like as well. This exhibition is the Isabella Bortolozzi Gallery in Berlin. And the name of the show, which he often has really great names for his shows, is called Ramon, How Was Trade Today? Have a break, sit, enjoy the food, you're not welcome at the table. And here you can see kind of his approach to making work. He has there's a lot of mutation, there's a lot of recycled materials, there's a lot of gestures of adjustment, which I kind of relate to the process of migration. His work extends beyond the painting, or beyond paintings in general, and he makes installations, videos, and but he's always working with the relationship of the worker. Not so much the artist. This is the next exhibition. I don't think that Oscar would call himself a painter necessarily, but an artist at large who uses a lot of any medium that is available. So on these canvases, there's probably as much oil as there is dirt. And that woman in the middle is his mother. And so I think going back to this idea of considering yourself a painter versus considering yourself a worker, he thought a lot about his mother, and he was thinking a lot about the process, the 1 second, sorry, I was also at Fade to Black last night, so my thoughts are a little bit excuse me. Sorry, so he was thinking about how these paintings are exhibited in a gallery in kind of a white cubed, idealized space, in a very sterile space. But he wanted to go back to these traditional Colombian food gatherings because it's a thing that starts to mix classes, to change the hierarchies of race, high and low, and like I said before, oil paint versus dirt. So in this exhibition, what he did is to recreate, this one is called a Mercantil Nobel. He was recreating a chocolate candy making factory in the gallery space. They flew down 13 workers from Colombia to actually inhabit the space and make the chocolate. So he went from selling paintings for crazy amounts of money to making an exhibition where it was all about giving away free chocolate, which is always awesome. So now I'm gonna come into the Caribbean, and I'll show you a couple of artists too. I'm gonna show you a couple of artists in each scale, rather than give you too many. Tavares Strachan, he's from Nassau, Bahamas. Another is the guy, and now working in New York. He's working with digital media, a lot of installation that questions science, technology, but also mythology and history. This is a book that you might want to check out by him. It's called Seen Unseen. And I think a lot of his work is about connection, connectivity. This piece is called I Belong Here, and it looks like some sort of stars or some sort of constellation. You belong here. This was here in Miami River. This is a piece I really admire by him. He took a 2.5 ton brick of ice from the Arctic and kept it cold by designing a kind of enclosure for this brick of ice. His ambition was to have something that he didn't have in the Bahamas growing up. This idea of what the cold environment was like. This is, something like this would be it becomes a big commodity in the Bahamas, and then displaying it like you would a found treasure somewhere, like if you went on a trip somewhere. The way that the system works is that the block of ice is kept cold by using solar panels. So it kind of makes an interesting interdependency of like two extremes, where you have the coldness of the block of ice, and then it's being maintained alive or being kept cold by the heat of the Bahamas sun. So I think it makes like an interesting system. The name of this piece, you should know, is the distance between what we have and what we want. And here's the piece. I think this has been going on for 7 years, and the block has still not melted. And it's still a net zero system. So now I'm gonna briefly talk about Alex Arechea, a Cuban artist who was going to make it to this panel but couldn't and had to jet back to New York. So I wanted to at least include some of the work. A lot of his work is about creating things that are always in negotiation with their environment. I think this is a really interesting piece. In inner cities, you see the basketball hoops anywhere, but to aggregate them this way makes such an interactive space, but somewhat of a politicized space for me. And I love the way that the balls are used at the ground. It kind of starts to give you some ways to move around this basket.
Where is this?
I'm not sure where this one is. I'm sorry.
Oh.
There actually was one showing here at I think Art Miami with Thomas Jaco Gallery, but it was a much smaller piece, and it was an addition, and I don't think it had the same presence as the full-scale piece. This is a very cool project. I've also moved around a lot in my life, so sometimes I feel like I'm the ping pong ball bouncing between these two homes. And this is a project called No Limits, which Alex did in New York, up and down Park Avenue. He was reconstructing architectural archetypes, building types, but playing with an idea that buildings are fixed objects, and they're not. And I think Alex takes that all the way to the extreme. Buildings expand and contract with heat and cold. Buildings have to move. I worked in San Francisco, and you have to make your buildings stand earthquakes and really high loads. But I like how he plays with it, with the building chasing its own tail. It kind of makes it into like a dog, and I would love to have control of a building like that one day. And now we're gonna go home. Dominican Republic is where I'm from. I'm going to show you a young artist who I just find like really, really interesting. I like the way that she doesn't define her way of making necessarily as an artist or as a videographer or as a performance artist. And I'll show you a few of her projects. This is Joidi with a shawl made out of hair. And Dominican women's hair is very important to them.
They had a straightened hair. They're masters.
Yep. But I want to talk a little bit about an installation that she made called C1A. And she's asking here, it says, ¿Quién tiene voz para hablar? Who has a voice to talk? Here's Joidi during the painting process that I described, which took her a month to make. This is a still from a video. The piece is kind of a multi-faceted piece. There's a video aspect to it. There's the painting, which is the archive that kind of gets left behind in the museum space. And then there's the actual kind of dance, the performative aspect of rubbing the paint off and interacting with that wall space. So here she is kind of preparing herself to go off and make the rubbing. That's the kind of the marks that are left behind. And then this is her moving across the surface. This is another piece by Joey. It's called Canela. And here she was playing kind of with ideas of skin tone, really, but also the idea of the DR as a destination, as a place of lounging. She covered her entire skin in cinnamon and laid in the middle of the gallery space as if she was at the beach. And now we're going to go to, like, for real, my home. This is now it's right in the center of the DR. And right in the center of here, to the right side, we have the church, and like any good, well, like most Dominican towns, the church is the center. But I think one thing that is very cool about our town is that right across from the church is the museum. And this area is called La Plaza de la Cultura, the Plaza of Culture. And the museum is fairly new. It was made by a Dominican expressionist artist named Candido Vilo, who I'll go into next. But it's great to live or to come from a place where God and art are kind of on the same level, and it's a very interesting idea because sometimes they can't really separate the two. And so this is what the Plaza de la Cultura looks like. These are the works by Candido Vilo. The last one here on the right is Julio Valentin, who worked under Candido Vilo. It was actually not adopted son, but I guess raised him. They work. Vilo makes paintings and drawings, of course. But it's interesting to see the work at this scale, where you start to activate an entire public place, and this type of aesthetic kind of runs into the city. Here we see the pillars that hold the light. They start to have the same mosaic patterns, and then that pattern even continues onto the floor and then throughout the city. So you feel really connected back to the museum space in Bonao, almost anywhere that you are in the downtown area, and it's a really special feeling. And so, I mean, if you look at Vilo's work, I think that his goal in this is to trace a lot of the visual motifs that kind of recur in African and Afro-descended artistic traditions, but then adding his own kind of Caribbean spices, I guess, to it. Like I said earlier, he is the father of Dominican Expressionism. Another work by Vilo. And this is the entrance to that museum space, or to that museum, rather. So to conclude, I kind of left off with some questions rather than answers, because I really don't have answers. But it's good to think about, like, what does it mean to be Black in these countries, and under what circumstances are you considered black and by whom in these societies. Actually, it's really funny because here we always think of Obama as a black president. I feel like if he were in the Dominican Republic, it might swing the other way. And so,
my mother was white.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't know what his life was growing up or anything, and I'm not sure if he had something that is closely directed with the black experience. But I think that, you know, back in my country, you might have more of a choice with where you put yourself, where you place yourself. So it varies a lot in Latin America in a way that might surprise people here in the US. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you. Well, we're going to ask the panelists to come up, and we'll give an opportunity to the audience to interact a little bit. All right, so any questions from the DC contingent? We in the house we've got Darwin Garn from St. Lucia. He's associated with the Jazz Festival, and they're thinking about doing. You want to stand up, Darwin? They want to add a Caribbean art fair type thing that's connected with the jazz. So he's up here looking at what's happening in Basel and getting some good ideas. And I have a classmate in the house, Jeffrey Thomas from Brown University. You want to stand up and say hello? He's a little shy. And Mr. Bailey in the back. Thank you for coming and joining us. All right, so any questions for the panelists? Any questions about or comments about what's going on with Art Black in Miami or Art Basel in general?
I want to ask Rene, the piece that you did, how long did it take you to do that?
What, the film?
Yeah.
That was like 40, like probably almost 50 real hours.
50.
Yeah, that's not like including lunch and, you know, going out for like a little break or anything like, I mean, 50 hours of really sitting in front of a computer using After Effects and Final Cut Pro.
So you were saying that that was your first video in the 25 years that you've been working?
Yeah, because when I was young and I went to Syracuse University, my first passion was film anyway, and I majored in film. And then at one point I decided to go with like the immediate gratification of photography. But so like my passion has always been film, but I never did anything, let's say, presentable in the 25 years. That's the first one that I'd say to you, yeah, this is solid.
Okay, so you had a background in film because it seemed like just too complex for someone to just do.
Well, I know, I work with people who know how to do the thing properly too. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier to somebody, I mean, like we come up in this environment where we're told that we're supposed to do everything, you know, and it's like I have to be 10 times better than everybody, and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. That's a lot of drama. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, like white people, we have to delegate. So you get people in there that know how to do the thing. I have the vision, I know what I want. I know what the medium is capable of, but I'm not gonna be a liar and tell you I sat there for, you know, I did everything and I knew every shortcut in Final Cut Pro and After Effects in order to create that. Hell no. You know, but I know what I want to see. That's the key thing. We need to stop torturing ourselves, you know, and try to do everything, because we can. I mean, look at white people. They had slaves. They said, we want a canal, dig that. We want this, we want that. They built it. And then they sat there and they said, look what I did. You know what I'm saying? Completely, you know, ridiculous. Right? And then they called us lazy. I was like, how do you call us lazy? You know, you go to a plantation down south, I mean, you see all the work. You have to drive like 5 miles before you get to the main house. And then the slaves had to clear all of that land where I couldn't even see her next to me. That's how thick the vegetation is. You know, who do you think did that? They didn't do that. They had slaves doing it. But I'm not saying that my people are slaves. I respect my people. And they're professional, and we work well together, and we're creating, yes. Well, not necessarily, not until I get paid. But and they're like my mastermind team. Yeah. So it's important to have people around you that can also help you realize what it is that you want to be able to put out there. And just to wrap this up really quickly, I mean, the main thing for me with this is that if I can get people out of their head for a second, and by that I mean, all of that mental noise that everybody's hearing on a perpetual basis. A society that's telling that you lack something, you need more, you need this, blah, 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 and comparing yourself to other people. I hope that this work makes you kind of go, like, whoa, like, what is this? Like, you can't compare it to anything. And even if it's just for a nanosecond, then I say, I've been successful. That's it. So, you're welcome.
This is, I'm going to direct it at Dr. Okediji, but I'm also going to ask Dr. Combs to perhaps share the conversation. Your top 10 picks were women artists, yes? More or less.
Not my picks.
Oh, the audience pick, yeah.
Yeah.
What you showed.
Except for one.
Yeah. But also you find in terms of the acquisition of work, women don't get the top 10 pick. You go to the galleries and museums, there's still not a vacancy in terms of women artists. So could you address that for us, either both of you?
I think this is perhaps why I did not ask professionals to do the final pick, open it up to the public to make the final decision, and this is what they've picked as top 10. And it seems as if there is some kind of disconnect between the market and the society in that sense. So I did not do the picking, so this is something that maybe the museums, the auction houses have to think about also in terms of how the market art and pick artists for sure.
In my response, I would say that particularly when we're looking at the works of art or artists, one of the people that I tend to look for folks who have a particular voice and have a vision, irrespective of their gender. However, one of the young women that we have in our photography collection is by the name of Keisha Bruce, and I think that she is a contemporary artist, photographer who has clearly shown the ways in which history and sort of life, family, all intersect. And so as it relates to us, we're looking for people that are going to really sort of speak to these universal and multiplicity sort of approaches to identity. And while it is true there are opportunities where the canon will say that that privileges men, I think when I'm looking for work, I'm looking for people who have a strong voice and who have a strong sort of presence in terms of their artistic acumen and technical abilities. And as a woman, I'm often going to look and seek individuals, and interestingly enough, as the African American Museum, we want to make sure that we are making a place and a voice for folks who are from the diaspora. Therefore, for us, it's really about people who have not had their sort of work and sort of hailed or privileged, period. Now, if that's a man or a woman, we want to make sure that we find and collect the best works possible. And that's really the way in which I look at sort of identifying and acquiring pieces.
Roger? What's the submission process, Dr. Combs, for the museum?
Well, at this point, we have, in terms of the exhibition process.
For the process
Acquisition.
of work.
Oh, acquisition process. Well, we have a team of, I'm on a team of curators, if you excuse me, and we have sort of a variety of priorities that we have in place. With our museum, we're going to have, as I mentioned, 11 permanent exhibitions. We're also going to have a changing exhibition, which will be privileging, if you will, more contemporary art. Within the 11 exhibitions, we have a visual arts gallery, we have 3 floors of actual history galleries that will look at issues regarding slavery and freedom, segregation, migration, these sorts of post-1968. We also have a whole section that really looks at what we're calling, is framed in terms of community. And so it's called Making a Way. And in that vein, we are addressing issues around sort of organizations, culture, family. So those become the priorities in terms of acquisition. Objects, visual art, photography are really sort of looked at and prioritized based upon sort of how they fit into the exhibitions that we are developing. From there, we have a team of curators that are looking for donations, looking to acquire, purchase things, and then we have a committee that determines whether or not this is something that we want to put in our permanent collection.
So where do we go?
You would go, I'll give you my card, how about that?
All right, go ahead.
How do you get this very scholarly debate and discussion to the white audience? How do I'm going to ask the whole panel, anybody can answer. How do they accept this debate, scholarly debate and discussion of the artist's work as presented here today? Because in other words, I hear a debate and discussion about wonderful artists and wonderful work. And then I heard that it was difficult to even host this today in the scheme of other things. So my question is, if the university here didn't feel it was quite as important as we would like it to be, how does this message on the importance of all of these artists and these people get to the greater art? Can anybody answer that?
Well, I'm going to take a stab at it, and I'm sure other people on the panel will have some ideas. But I have to say that in Miami, there is a young lady, Denise Andrews, who we had a committee called the African Diaspora Fine Arts Committee, and this was back in the day, before, in say 85, right? And, we were a group of local people of African descent who decided that we were going to engage the museum community to make sure that they would show work of people of African descent. And in some ways we were successful. We were put on the agenda, right? So with some venues, some distribution channels, we don't have much control, because Basel would be one where we can't tell them what to do. But we're, I think now, considered to be an important part of the art world. I mean, if you look at, say, the leading cities in the world, like London now has the Tate Museum as a curator of contemporary African diaspora art. So, we're at the table. So doing this, we've been doing this, Edmund and I, 10 years at University of Miami with literally no funding. I volunteered doing, curating shows here so that we could have a voice. It's a smaller audience, but the University of Miami is supposed to be the best university in the state. So, you know, it's a good venue. And I don't think that next year, I think the new director of the Low indicated that she wants to support us. You know, I don't know if that's going to be true, because, you know, the bottom line is if they don't give us money, they don't need it. You know, and you know, when the other director was here, he also promised to come to our events. He never did. You know, so we have to keep doing it. You know, we have to keep doing it, and we are producing a lot more artists now, and obviously our culture is, the foundation of it is Africa, and that means it's original, we have a lot to say. Our experience has also been challenging. So in that respect, my answer to you would be, we have to continue doing this. I think, you know, what I said this year, when the university realized it might not happen, and as I said, the new director, they now have a show on Africa and on Haiti over at the Low, so when you're done, you should go see it. But we had a conversation with her where she said, you know, they also had an event this morning, and, you know, she said, next year this is not gonna happen. You know, so hopefully there'll be more support and we can get a bigger space. I'm happy with the space, but, you know, just the support. Now, there are people in the community who stepped up and said this thing had to happen. Thank you, Marilyn. And, you know, thank Sugarcane Magazine. People who recognize the work that we've been doing is important. So, you know, that's another piece, is that we have to support our own people.
Is this kind of discussion, for instance, happening at the Studio Museum in Harlem? Do they hold these kinds of wonderful opportunities to hear about the greater art world in the African diaspora?
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Yeah,
The studio is very African
Yeah.
diaspora oriented. I mean, you know, Larry Sims is much more so than Thelma is, but I mean, clearly, they're engaging artists of the entire African diaspora.
I just want to say something, because as we're having this conversation, I'm almost feeling like, look, you know what? Can we get like a little bit more Marcus Garvey here? And the thing is, I'm going like, you guys in Obalaba did a great, incredible space. And it's a great show that Tumelo put together. And if these people want to give you some sort of trouble here, I would say, and ask you, of course, you know, would you be interested in hosting this like in Obalaba, where there's some change happening and it's a stronger environment? You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Then to, you know, I'm tired of like having to keep asking white people, you know, can we have a little bit of the pie? You know what I'm saying? If I was white, I wouldn't care about you people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd be like, yo, you know, like whatever, figure it out. Oh, here's some points for you. Okay, fine, shut up. You know what I'm saying? But I'm thinking, like, why is it that we haven't been able to sort of take this back and create our own market? I mean, we've got a lot of wealthy black people. You know, I mean, what they're doing over at Basel, that's a stock market. They're playing, they got chips and stuff. It could be like a casino. They're making bets. No, but they are. That's business. That's green. That's dollar signs. You know, we have the capability of doing that. And I'm always like, how come we don't do that? How come we're not, no, but I'm saying, how come we're not supporting our own and looking at our own and saying, you know, this is great. I don't, like in my video, I don't need validation. I mean, believe you me, it took me a long time to get to that point. It wasn't overnight, okay? It took decades. But I mean, but when you get there, it's like, I don't need the validation from the others. Why? You're giving them way too much power. We can do this ourselves. You went to Harvard, we're smart, we're not idiots, so why don't we do it ourselves? Yeah? Huh? Yeah,
well, you know, good point. I mean, I think we have been doing it in regard, you know, I mean, we've been doing it. I mean, so.
No, but we keep skirting. We keep going, oh, well, you know, they should give us this and they should give us that. I'm like, no, Forget it.
Well,
They don't have to give us
as
anything.
one of the things I have to say is I'm happy they decided that they weren't going to fund us, even at a level that they should, so that, you know, I had to go out and find sponsors. And as I said, there were people in the community that kicked up to make this possible. So, you know,
Maybe we bring it to the community.
Well, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
To find more stakeholders who are interested in making this happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was also at Dakar and hold a lot of interest in the global diaspora and influence in impacting what is called the canon of modern art. I could also go back to Rene in China, which I thought was also excellent to expose, you know, another African diaspora person in that market as well. I think the issue is, you know, how do we engage with people like Ms. Hollyfield, who represents both a personal and institutional heft to kind of help support this overall impact. So this conversation is not just here, it's not just happening here. I mean, we come down with the Phillips and we sponsored a mural done by Senegalese artists who painted the mural in Dakar, also in Washington. So this matter of our engagement, our taking our own responsibility to engage in Africana is also very important. So these conversations are important. You know, I love, you know, supporting you, you know, Ludlow and the things that you do here. But you know, it's the engagement and recognizing that across these many communities, we have to honor our own, hold our own, think through our own, assert our own, but also engage in other people who, you know, have this vision. We're not as well connected as we need to be. So Marilyn, you know, thanks for this. I'm just delighted, and the other sponsors. But we have to, you know, develop an increasing confidence in ourselves that indeed we can do this, but with other institutions.
Yeah, Black Sunday School.
Yeah. Any other questions? Betty? You're passing. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you for having this panel. I mean, I've been wanting to ask Professor Moyo many questions. I have a two-part question for you, Professor. The first question is, in terms of amnesia, can you express more detail as to this process and to how it relates to the artist? Symbolisms, African aesthetics, etc. The second part of the question is, can amnesia then be used as a platform to elaborate on the unconscious state that the artist works in?
Well, I don't know if I have the capacity to take on such very deep question.
I mean, I think, yeah, it's like, I don't think, I know for me right now, I mean, I'm working from a conscious place. I can't do that being unconscious, because I can't create like that. You know what I'm saying? When I'm creating, it's like, my mind has to be empty. You know, no thought. You know, even Einstein said thinking is highly overrated. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you can't, I don't have a blueprint, I don't know what it's gonna look like before. And for me, that's like the most beautiful thing. You know, because it's like, otherwise, I mean, I went to the Whitney Independent Study Program and it was a lot of theory. And studying theory, you would see people freeze. You know, they'd read one chapter of Walter Benjamin, and you know, who's already depressed anyway when he's writing this stuff. These are not happy people that come up with all this theory. You know, they're like talking in circles, right? And the work that would be produced was like dreadful. You know, I mean, they thought it was smart, but it wasn't, it didn't engage you. It didn't come from the heart. I think the missing link is that people, like, creativity, like you can start in the head, but let me say this, your heart is like your other brain, right? And that, if it comes from there, then I think it's, you get a better connection. I think a lot of stuff you see now, even at Basel, I mean, I see stuff and I'm like, wow, man, I need to talk to that artist because you're like so depressed. Like, because they're making such ugly stuff that they have to be like sad. You know, something's wrong. And I don't mean that in a, you know, nasty way. I mean, honestly, you know. 'Cause
No, I totally understand.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess what I was referencing was artists in the diaspora that when they work, their work symbolisms in their work is relative to African symbolisms, although they have no conscious knowledge of what these symbols mean or what these symbols are used for. So you take, for instance, like in different spiritualities that are throughout Africa, different masks that they use for different rites of passage, etc. So these different symbols are being shown by artists of this day, and many of the artists don't relate. You're saying it's homework.
Well, no, it's homework to know about it, you know what I'm saying?
It could be a lack of research, but there's also, you know, Alvin Ailey, the dancer, he says that, you know, how can I dance this way? And when he didn't really learn how to dance this way in a European environment. So what he says is it comes from blood memories. There are things that were just given through our families, or given through the things that we incorporate into our lives, so that end up manifesting in the work later.
Yeah, so it's coming through your chromosomes, through your genetics. So it's a form of amnesia, because you would have forgotten these things. These things would now be in your unconscious mind.
Well, I think creativity has two parts to it, at least. There is the expressive culture, and there is the analytical culture, and both work together. The expressive culture seems a little bit more spontaneous, without much thought being given to making sure that everything is perfect before you actually go to do it. But the analytical culture is also intuitive, but it needs perhaps a little bit more calculation and thinking things out and seeing how they connect. And the matter of analyzing culture, I don't think has been so prominent within Africa or African diasporic creativity. There are lots and lots of artists and few writers, and that creates some kind of void, because analysis actually helps artists to locate themselves when they are aware of what the thinkers are saying. And to go to your matter of amnesia, I would think that amnesia really is some kind of disconnect between space and time, in a situation in which the artist could be doing something without even being really aware of what the artist is doing. But it sometimes isn't necessary for the artist to totally know what he or she is doing. And later on, when the artist now looks at the image, the artist might actually begin to figure out what he or she has been doing simply by rereading the image and seeing the spaces of amnesia that are being recollected in the images produced by the artist.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. And with that, we're going to close for now, because the food is there, and I know people have schedules. Before you leave, if you be on campus, it's definitely worth seeing